Morocco still lives in the imagination of Europe as the exotic and enchanting country of the tales of the Arabian Nights. In the interior of the mosques, decorated in incredible detail, in the harsh green slopes and flowering canyons of the Anti-Atlas, in the inhabitants of the desert with burnouses and camels, in the inimitable atmosphere of the bazaars reminiscent of the past, in the savory scent of the spices, in the patterns of the carpets, in the sound of the snake-charming flutes, in the colorful bustle of the medinas and the flavor of the mint tea, the thousand-faced Morocco still lives as we imagined and as we longed for it. The charm of Marrakesh starts with the colors, with the limestone of the nearby mountains, of which the houses were built once. Today a royal decree orders that the houses of the city, regardless of what material they are made from, can only be the original terracotta color. These are mostly coupled with light, pale green doors and windows, strictly defining the landscape. The symbol of Marrakesh is the 76-meter-high minaret of the Koituba Mosque. The ecclesiastical building has been standing here since 1158. It was named after the more than 100 bookshops which offer their product in the nearby streets for the wise men of the Arab world, philosophers, and poets. The rectangular tower with brick decoration served as a model for other minarets in the country, which rise at the end of almost every avenue. The Bahia Palace doesn't originate from the Middle Ages, but from the 19th century. It was the palace of Ba Ahmed, Grand Vizier of the king. This rank means prime minister by the concept of Europeans, and this palace corresponds to this concept. The garden of the palace is made colorful by banana trees, cypress trees, jasmines, and other blooming bushes. The building itself was designed using Spanish, Moor, and French elements. Like Arab palaces in general, it's not arranged around a central point, but it's a labyrinth of separate rooms connected with corridors surrounding inner courtyards. In the courtyards, fountains bubble. The scent of orange and the flowers on the bushes floats in the air. The rooms with marble or mosaic floors served the purposes of greeting the visitors, holding council or dining, while the smaller ones were in the living rooms and bedrooms. All rooms are richly decorated, especially the ceilings are beautiful. In the southern part of the French Quarter, we can find the Menara Garden, from the time of the Almohads. In the park developed around the large artificial lake, we can see a music and light show in the evenings, from Wednesday to Saturday. Marrakesh is not only famous for its roses, but also for its parks and botanical gardens. The Majorelle Garden, established by a French painter, is today the property of the fashion designer Yves Saint Laurent, but it's open for visitors for an admission fee. Several other famous people, mostly French, had or have here houses. For example, Alain Delon, Michel Morgan, or Jean-Paul Belmondo. The new theatre of the city, built in a traditional style, is beautiful, in which French artists often give presentations also. In Morocco, after the proclamation of independence, that is, the end of the protectorate, French remained the second official language, obligatory to learn in school. English and German are spoken only by those working in tourism. Even those who are not fond of shopping like to go to bazaars in Arab countries. Souk means market or bazaar, which can traditionally be found in the Medina, the old town. The Arab bazaar is the confusing labyrinth of narrow alleys framed by small shops, workshops, and storages. Depending on the size of the city, there are smaller and bigger ones, of course, but the tourists can lose their ways easily. And it's possible to spend the whole day looking around. In the souk, everything is strange and special. The products, the shops, the colors, the noises, the smells, the clothes, and the people. The ethnicity of Morocco is as diverse as the country itself. Anthropologists still argue about the origins of the Berbers, the original inhabitants. They're mostly blue-eyed, blonde people. The conqueror Arabs constitute the majority of the population. As descendants of the merchants of the Roman Empire, a significant Jewish minority lives here, mostly in separate Jewish quarters, the Mellahs. The Haratins are descendants of the slaves deported from Africa beyond the Sahara in the 16th century. After the French protectorate, many Europeans, mostly French and Spanish, settled here in large numbers also. The communities of different origin, culture, and religion live here together in such a peace that cannot be seen at any other place, unfortunately. As a result, the mixing of ethnic groups is significant, so we can meet people with quite special outlooks and characteristics. As we can observe in other Arab countries and in Turkey, the different craftsmen and merchants have their own streets. There's a spice street, carpet street, slipper maker's street, Goldsmith Street, for instance. Scarves and brass jugs, clay pots and fruit are sold here. Heaps of teas and spices, medicines and magic powders in all quantities. There are fresh mint leaves, argan oil, ambergris of sperm whales, dried varanus, so everything that Harry Potter studied about. The brass lamp looks as though it were only waiting to be rubbed. The carpets are so beautiful, and maybe they can fly too. Anyhow, the chameleon locked in a cage looks at us quite strangely. The Djemaa El Fna is the biggest square of Marrakesh, and the most exciting in all Morocco. During the day, it's a single huge market, the outdoor continuation of the little shops of the souk, covered with straw mats. People come here by everything except by car. The transportation is on donkey back, shoppers mostly come by bicycle, and the visitors by open hansom cabs. We can have resort to many services. The street dentist, for instance, who rids us of our pains and teeth using pliers borrowed from a plumber without using any anesthetics. The tooth is then placed on the little table among the thousands of others. As the sun is sinking, the image of the square changes. Such fabulous enchanted creatures fill the Djemaa El Fna, as if nothing had changed in the past 1,000 years. The trade of the dates, almonds, and orange juice sellers starts up. They roast sheep's eyes and chitterlings over live coal, and the brochette, made French style, is also popular. As appetizer, a dozen snails are offered, not at a snail's pace, for only a few dirhams. The scent of oriental spices floats in the air. The couscous is being made. The keshra and kefta is roasted. The Berber girls take up henna body painting. The snake charmers appear with their flat-headed black pets, the cobras. Their boosters pull harmless grass snakes around the necks of spectators with fondness. Others have little monkeys on leashes, performing something. Others only rattle their tin cups without any performance. The drums resound. The mass of people gather around Sudanese dancers. At another place, people are standing around Koran interpreters. But storytellers from the desert are also popular. Wonder substance sellers walk around the belly dancers with little platters in their necks. One can photograph water sellers in richly decorated clothes with leather bottles for only a few dirhams, while a little further down the road, fire eaters and other artistes ask for attention. If we feel like it, we can rise above the bustle. In the roof terrace of almost every house surrounding the square, there's a cafe or tea house, from where we can admire the square and the sunset. A wealthy Moroccan entrepreneur saw the Chez Ali, a gigantic entertainment facility, in a dream, and he made it come true. It's a little bit like the Arab Disneyland. Everything was collected here what the Arab architecture had to offer. They built these scenic palaces, and in front of them the large tents that can hold masses of people. All this surrounds a square-shaped, sandy arena. The arriving guests are greeted with mint tea. They can have the many courses of their meals sitting on comfortable cushions at the low tables, while the musicians of the highlands of South Morocco entertain the guests. The waiters are busy. They bring the harira and the tagina on large platters. After consuming the sweets and the fruit, there's a folklore show, where guests may start to dance also. On the arena, soon a Berber war game on horseback will be staged. Although the performance will be on till midnight, it's sure that the spectacular show with acrobats and pyrotechnics will fascinate both grown-ups and children. On the way out, we can visit the treasure cave of the 40 Thieves. Marrakesh is the last touch of eternal beauty. It's as everlasting as the snow on the highest peaks, and as gripping as the Atlas was written in the Middle Ages. From the city, we can drive to the famous Palm Garden, where there's a royal golf course. We can go on a bigger excursion to the further Ouarzazate, or the nearer Ourika Valley. The winding street of the dead-end valley leads to the foot of the 4,160-meter-high Tobkal Peak. The river Ourika, unlike other rivers of the region, doesn't dry out in summer, so the valley is harsh green all year round. The local people go skiing to the High Atlas, which largely differs from the picture we have in mind about Morocco. The valley is surrounded by little Berber villages. We can observe characteristic forms of Berber buildings, the Qasar, which is a group of flat-roof, box-like houses closely clinging to each other, surrounded by a wall. We can glance at a mill propelled by the power of a river. We can see the workshops of potters and other craftsmen. In the mountains, the locals live in difficult circumstances. Their children like to rush to the tourist buses to ask for 1 or 2 dirhams. If we don't have change or don't want to give them, we can please them with some sweets, chewing gums, pencils or pens, which are difficult to get hold of here. The Berbers wear monocolored burnouses with a hood. The robe of the women, made of wool, is held together by silver buckles and pins. All this largely differs from what people wear in the cities, the djellaba, which is coupled with a hat called fez at men and a veil for women. The clothing is the symbol of tribal belonging. In spite of this, the young people in the cities follow the European fashion. The hospitable Berbers like to offer their flat, unleavened, freshly baked bread, the kesra, which we can make more tasty with argan oil flavored with orange flowers or with homemade honey. Mint tea goes with this, which is always stronger in the mountains than in the cities. The Berbers drink it very sweet, and pour the drinks to the lined-up cups, lifting the kettles up high.
Trouble. How much trouble? Too much trouble. Well, now, don't you frown. Just knuckle down and knock on wood. Who's unhappy? We're unhappy. How unhappy? Too unhappy. Uh-oh, that won't do. When you are blue, just knock on wood. Who's unlucky? We're unlucky. How unlucky? Too unlucky. But your luck will change if you arrange to knock on wood. Who's got nothing? We got nothing. How much nothing? Too much nothing. Said nothing's not an awful lot, but knock on wood.
The name Casablanca has meant the same since 1943 as the movie that became a classic. Everybody wants to see the bazaar where Ingrid Bergman was shopping, and the Café of Rick, played by Humphrey Bogart. Those who approach the city from this point of view will be disappointed. The atmosphere of the film is much more tangible in Marrakesh or Fez. Casablanca is the biggest city not only of Morocco, but the entire North African region. It's a busy and noisy port and industrial city. Its medina was mostly devastated by the earthquake in 1755. What was left is not very big, but it creates an interesting contrast with the modern metropolis. The name of the city was probably given after the government palace. Casablanca means white house. While every house in Marrakech is brick red, and the houses of Fez are ochre yellow, in Casablanca almost every building is white. According to this, the houses of the old town are whitewashed, together with the arches above the narrow little streets. Of course, there is a royal district here also, the Mechawar. The fascinating building of the prefecture is the characteristic example of Arab and ornamental architecture. Although this is an official building, in many similar old palaces, places for accommodation were furnished. These are the so-called riads, the equivalent of Spanish paradors or Portuguese pousadas. The furnishings mostly consist of original furniture, and they only make allowances for the expectations of the age with regard to the bathrooms. The city can boast of relatively few sights, especially since we look for Rick's Cafe in vain. However, in the modern Sheraton Hotel there is a Casablanca bar, which is made intimate by the photos and posters of the film. Moreover, we can buy t-shirts portraying Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart, and in the evenings Sam plays it again on the synthesizer. Besides the old mosques, the Moulay Youssef and the Mohammed V, there are two Christian churches as remembrances of the French Protectorate, the Notre Dame de Lourdes and the Sacré-Cœur Cathedral. After the big earthquake, the Portuguese residents left the city that they called Casablanca. At this time, Sultan Mohammed bin Abdallah had Berbers settled here and established a flourishing trading city. He founded mosques, baths, and Koran schools. The busy Mohammed V Square is the center of the modern city. The building of the City Hall, with its 50-meter-high tower, stands in the southern part. In the eastern side, we can find the white block of the Moor-style Palace of Justice, decorated with green majolica. On the northern side is the archaic building of the main post office. There's also the police office, the French consulate, with the equestrian statue of Marshal Leote. This is the only statue in Morocco, since Islam forbids the portrayal of people. The basis of the economy of the city is the port, the traffic of which exceeded that of Tangier and Rabat even back in 1856. In 1907, the French provoked a riot here, which finally led to the occupation of Morocco. The throne of Allah is over the water, says the Koran. The father of the present ruler, King Hassan II, wanted to put this idea into practice when he entrusted the French Michel Pinceau with designing the most monumental mosque of the country. The basis was given by the rocky peninsula reaching into the sea, and it was supplemented and fortified to hold the 9,000 square meters of building complex, with a minaret of 210 meters. The declared cost of the construction was, in the early 90s, $800 million. The maintenance costs are also very high, which is not covered by the admission fee of 100 dirhams per person. According to the Moroccan opposition, this exorbitant sum should have been used for other, more important purposes. With a foreigner's eye, it definitely looks as though the infrastructural developments, the reservoirs, the environment protection, the development of healthcare, and the creation of new jobs should have been of much greater importance. However, don't forget that we're talking about an Islamic country where religion is a defining element of the everyday lives of people. Anyhow, Hassan II erected a lasting monument for himself and the royal family of Alawita. The building, which was opened in 1993, mirrors the technical level of the end of the 20th century, and to its credit, it does it so that we may think the building, guarding Islamic traditions, is centuries older than what it really is. For instance, the visitors don't know that the large chandeliers are lowered by electric engines for cleaning, that the muezzin goes up to the dizzying high tower by speed elevator, and that the lace decorations of the pillars hide high-tech speakers. The ornamental decorations of the interior, the stalactites, were made by mixing gypsum and egg whites. 35,000 people worked on them over a period of 7 years. The interior of the mosque can hold 25,000 men, while on the balconies 5,000 women can pray. This separation has strictly practical reasons. If the space of a mosque doesn't allow this, then women may only kneel in the back rows, because if they were in the front, bowing, it would supposedly evoke ideas in men not appropriate for prayers. In the buildings surrounding the mosque Islamic library, conference rooms and religious schools function. On the square closed by the wings of the buildings, 80,000 believers may sing the praise of Allah simultaneously. Since the believers don't come here on camels anymore, there's an underground parking place under the square. In the below stairs there's also a bath, which mostly serves the purposes of ritual cleansing. The 5 main pillars of faith, to which we are reminded by the 5-pointed star of the Moroccan flag, are the following: faith, prayer, fasting, charity, and pilgrimage. To remind to the obligation of pilgrimage, from the top of the minaret a laser ray of light, visible from a distance of 30 kilometers, shows the direction to Mecca. Rabat is one of the royal cities, which was nominated capital city in 1912 by the French governor and the Sultan of Morocco jointly. The city lies on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, at the estuary of the river Bou Reg Reg. The Mechouar is the royal district, surrounded by fortified walls. There's the Ministry of Religion and the Supreme Court. The palace itself was built in the 18th century, but it was completely transformed by Mohammed V, who ascended to the throne in 1956. He was the first Moroccan ruler who had himself called king instead of sultan. The low building block, in accordance with the local tradition, doesn't show its astonishing wealth on the outside. Only those diplomats and politicians who are entitled to enter can see its opulence. Hassan II ruled here for 38 years. Following his death in 1999, his son, Mohammed VI, ascended to the throne. The picture of the enlightened young ruler is displayed not only in public offices, but also in many shops, and it often appears on the screen of the Moroccan TV channel. He is the first ruler whose wife and daughter appeared in public. On Fridays, he can be seen in person when, according to custom, he rides to the Al Fas mosque for prayer. His fleet of Aston Martins, Mercedes, and other luxury cars often passes the streets of the city. Besides the royal cities, there are also royal residences in Tangier and Agadir. Yaqub al-Mansur, the founder of Rabat, wanted to build the biggest mosque of the Arab world in 1195, in which his entire army could pray together. They started placing the 312 pillars on the 25,000 square meters, and the 44-meter-high minaret, similar to the Kutubiyya of Marrakesh, was also built. This tower was originally designed to be twice this size, but because of the death of the Sultan, the construction was halted. Hassan II is at his final resting place in the mausoleum built on the square, who, if not in Rabat, but made the dream of Yaqub al-Mansur came true. It's mostly Moroccans who come here to pay tribute in the vault to the father and grandfather of the present ruler, but it's also visited by many tourists. The building, snow white on the outside, is decorated by black, white, and golden arabesques on the inside. In the burial vault, foot soldiers, at the wall, cavalrymen stand guard of honor. The Medina was founded by Muslims fleeing from Spain in the 17th century. Its eastern border is the river Bou Reg Reg, which once transacted huge commercial ship traffic. To the north, it runs to the cliffs, reaching into the ocean, while in the south and in the west, it's bordered by the Andalusian and the Almohad Wall, respectively. The length of the city wall, built by the dynasty it was named after, is 5.5 kilometers. Several bastions and watchtowers were built on it. The settlement was made capital in the late 1100s by Yaqub al-Mansur, and he gave it the name Rabat. In the 1600s, the independent Bou Reg Reg Republic was proclaimed, which was at war with Spain but traded with England, Portugal, and Holland. The Mohammedan graveyard is at the foot of the Almohad Wall. Nearby, there is the Lala Qadia Caravanserai, known by the entire Arab world, where pilgrims returning from Mecca spent the night. The whitewashed houses and the stairs winding between them make the old town similar to Greek villages. From the end of some alleys, we can see the river, and Saleh on the other side, which today is the suburb of Rabat. Moulay Idris is a scenic little town built on two hills, 550 meters above sea level. It was named after a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, founder of the Idrisid dynasty. His rival, Harun al-Rashid, Caliph of Baghdad, had him poisoned. Moulay is the mausoleum of Idris. Thus, the town is one of the most sacred places of the Moroccans. Nearby, the ruins of the old Roman city Volubilis can be found. Emperor Caligula had the city, with 20,000 residents, built on the site of a Phoenician village on a 400-meter-high diamond-shaped plateau. 40 bastions stand guard over the 40-hectare area, surrounded by a 2,300-meter-long stone wall. Out of the 8 gates, it's one in the southeast that leads into the ruined city today. In 1720, an English traveller, John Windus, wrote a guide and made nice engravings of Volubilis. According to these, the city matches the Jerash of Jordan in intactness. However, Moulay Ismail made Meknes the capital city, and for the construction he had the stones and marbles carried away. What was left by him was devastated by the memorable earthquake. Today it's primarily the triumphal arch and one of the walls of the basilica which are undamaged, and also the domed aqueduct, the Decumanus Maximus, running along the main street, which carried the water of the Fertassa to the city. The mosaics covering the floors in the Knight's House, the Labours of Hercules, and the House of Venus have remained, depicting Bacchus, Diana, and Amor. In the southern part of the ruins, the pools of the baths of Emperor Gallienus can be found, together with the remains of a baker's shop and some oil presses. Meknes has been the gate of the Middle Atlas for centuries. It's a flourishing merchant city. It was especially famous for its leather and wheat markets. Of the sights of the city, the Dar-Jama'i Palace, the residence of the vizier, rises above the others, the 40-meter deep cisterns of which provided the water supply of the royal palace and the stables. Over the cisterns, there's the other large, domed underground building, one part of which was the granary. The other part functioned as stables. The 12,000 horses of the Sultan were better treated than the 30,000 slaves and 3,000 Christian prisoners held captive in the Prison des Chrétiens, which were similar underground premises. These prisoners worked on the building of the city wall, the constructions of the cisterns and the granary, the fortification of the city. Not much remained of the famous stables, but the stud of the 450 Arab thoroughbreds of Meknes is famous throughout the country. Meknes bears traces of the work of Sultan Moulay Ismail. The contemporary admirer of Louis XIV wanted to create a Moroccan Versailles here. The ruler, with excellent organizing and strategic skills, imitated the French king not only in leadership style, but also in splendor and luxury. It was diplomatic complication when he proposed to the daughter of the Sun King to keep her in a harem where she could scrape along as the umpteenth wife, which proposal, of course, was rejected. As compensation, the Sultan got great presents from the French, among them the clocks that stand in his mausoleum today. The Villa Imperiale is the palace city, and although it's still one of the royal palaces, it has lost from its significance together with the city. Although 2 descendants of Moulay Ismail still govern from here, from the early 19th century, Meknes has not been a capital anymore, and its treasures, together with even the stones and ornaments of many places, are taken to Marrakesh. The French made full use of the favorable conditions of the city regarding agriculture and the food industry. The existing wheat mills, oil presses, and wine cellars were supplemented with modern canning factories. In the souks, not only the shops and products are unique, but also the people. Where do we know these dune dwellers from? Dressed in hooded jalabas. Yes, in Morocco was filmed Star Wars, not to mention Gladiator and Alexander the Great, together with some scenes of other super productions. The costume designers did not have to go far for the patterns. The establishment of big film studios and post-production studios has become an important source of income for the country, especially around Marrakesh and Ouarzazate. In the beginning, filmmakers liked to come here for the same reasons they liked Hollywood. The weather is always good and the sky is blue. Then they discovered the natural and architectural beauties which serve as ideal scenes for the movies. The low prices are an important aspect also, and in a country where unemployment is high, there are always extras. Today, even Casablanca would not be filmed in a studio. In the deep valley of Sabo, one of the most beautifully located settlements in the world is Fes, between the Rif Mountain and the Middle Atlas. We can make sure of this if we look at it from the Kasbah built in the mountain top. The most ancient Moroccan royal city has 2 rivers and many medicinal springs. Fes was founded in 789 by Idris I, and it became a real capital under the rule of his son. Just like the intersections of caravan routes in general, it was a merchant town. However, not only products, but intellectual and spiritual trends also changed owners here. People who settled here in the 9th century, coming from Andalusia, populated the right bank of the Fes River, while those who came from Tunisia populated the left bank. In the first half of the 11th century, the 2 parts melded, establishing the Medina, which practically has not changed ever since, surrounded by a 17-kilometer-long city wall. The biggest and most intact souk was declared part of the World Heritage by UNESCO in 1976. The bazaar of Fes, among many others, is famous for the hard-working leather tanners, craftsmen, and furriers. Nothing was modernized here. They worked with the same technology in the time of Moulay Idris also. The forestallers bring in the skins of slaughtered sheep. We can imagine what it means after a holiday when all Moroccan families slaughter a sheep. The meat is used for a festive meal. The skin is sold to the forestallers. The bloody skins are corroded clean in a huge vat of pigeon droppings and quick slime. All tanneries of the souk have terraces overlooking these vats. From here, we can observe this grueling work which takes from dawn till dusk. We can have ideas of the smell if we know that all visitors are given a bunch of fresh mint leaves which they can keep under their noses. The skins go from one vat to another. The tanned skins are soaked in vats filled with natural paint. They use saffron, henna, and other vegetable matters to paint the skins yellow, red, or brown. The prepared skins are used to make leather jackets, shoes, belts and bags, and the typical Arab leather puff. The different fabrics are beautiful, of which the jalabas, turbans, and scarves are made. Into the fabrics, often traditional tribal patterns are woven. The Berber, Bedouin, and Tuareg garbs are different. The famous blue scarves of the Tuaregs are painted with the same indigo as the jeans. There are many ways of folding a turban. They like to show it in practice, even on the head of tourists. In the more than 1,000 streets and alleys of the Medina, there are more than 300 mosques and several Koran schools.
Since the Arabs were nomads, refined architecture was not part of their culture. When, in the course of their conquests, they reached the Roman provinces and Persia, and as soon as they managed to settle in Andalusia, from that moment on, they began to develop their own unique architectural style. Thus, the Moorish style is basically the blending of architectural styles seen elsewhere.
Et quand ils ont commencé à construire, ils travaillaient avec les chrétiens ensemble, ils avaient eu un problème, un obstacle, c'est que dans l'islam, toute représentation, statue et tout est interdite.
The first big problem occurred when they began building in Hispania, together with Christians, and the 2 styles became interspersed. This was problematic because in the Arab world, it was forbidden to portray humans and animals. Once the Moors lived in the midst of Christians, this was the one case in which they didn't agree with them. As a result, they started out in their own direction, which ended up developing into the unique Moorish style of architecture.
The most visited shrine of Morocco is the Zawiya de Moulay Idris. If we look through one of the 3 richly engraved gates, we can see the prayer room. The tomb of the ruler is behind it. If we walk between the date and pistachio cellars to the richly decorated south wall of the building, we can see a lattice window made of cedar with a copper plate on it. Through this, the believers throw their donations, and then they kiss the wall to ask the blessing of the ruler who rests on the other side. On the streets of the market, transportation is still done by pack animals, donkeys and mules. Cars are not allowed. At some places, we have to watch our heads, because at eye's height, a beam is laid across the alley, since people can bow to get through it. For the illiterate donkeys that are unable to bow, it means no entry. It's not allowed to enter mosques of the Islamic countries with shoes on, so the hand-woven soft carpets have great significance. Since carpets are laid even in the tents of nomads, the culture of weaving was developed hundreds of years ago. The patterns are tribal motifs in villages and geometric shapes in cities. A truly good Moroccan carpet may have more than 100,000 knots in a square meter. Fondouk Zetawine, the last functioning caravanserai of the souk, was built in the 16th century. The storied building offers accommodation for the merchants. In the tables on the ground floor, they can keep their pack animals. In the storage, they can keep their products, and they can sleep in the rooms upstairs. Fes is the treasure of the kingdom, the local people have kept saying for centuries. The Arab shopkeepers and craftsmen live in the Medina, and they go to work to the souk. The melas, or the Jewish quarters, are different from the quarters of the Arab merchants on the surface because the flat is always over the shop or workshop. The craftsmen of the city are known throughout the country. Of the works of the smiths and goldsmiths, the large copper and silver bowls with raised patterns are the most characteristic. Many articles are made with bone or mother-of-pearl inlay. Such articles are the gracefully curved, elaborate daggers with chiseled grips. Other weapons, ornaments, and saddles are made also. The potters make their bowls, vases, and pots in the traditional way, throwing, burning, and painting by hand. The tagine is not the name of a food, but the name of the pot in which it is made. They make food in the ornamented pot with a typical tapered lid over live coals. It works much like the Roman casserole, which preserves the original flavor and taste of food steamed together. On the site of present-day Agadir, the Portuguese founded a merchant town by the name of Santa Cruz de Cabguer in the early 1500s. The Arabs also recognized its favorable location, so the Sultan attacked it in 1541. The city, which went to the hands of the Arabs, flourished for centuries. Fearing the comeback of the Portuguese, a Casbah was built on the 233-meter-high mountain rising above the port. Sardine fishing meant a secure living for centuries. The warm water of the Gulf streams stretched in front of the coasts of Agadir, and shoals of fish followed this stream. This is how the biggest sardine port in the world developed. Unfortunately, some decades ago the Gulf Stream was diverted from its former route. Thus the shoals of fish rarefied as well. In the port, even today, fish auctions are held. Primarily cold stores and fish processing factories bid on the bigger items. Those who long for real exoticism can go on a day-long cruise on the Atlantic Ocean. Excellent lunch is made from the fish caught along the way. If they succeed in catching a shark, they will prepare that too. Agadir was not devastated by the earthquake in the 18th century, but the one that occurred in February 1960. The epicenter of the earth and sea quake was directly next to the city. The death toll was 15,000. Practically all the buildings in the city were ruined. Reconstruction took years. Maybe there are not any monuments, but there are things to see. The new Great Mosque is just as nice as the old had been. In the place of the devastated old town, a new medina was built, which is practically a village museum where a little Arab town was created with the concentrated use of the materials and patterns of Moroccan architecture. Coco Palizzi, designed by a famous Sicilian architect, a town lying on an area of 4 square kilometers, was made for the tourists. The conception was the synthesis of the motifs of the Mediterranean and the Berbers of the Sahara. To reduce the supposedly high cost of the construction, they collect admission fees. 180 handicraft shops, Arab cafes, and 4 restaurants can be found on the inside. The construction is continuous. In the near future, the development of the botanical garden will be started. The prices in the shops are higher than in the bazaars, and it's not possible to bargain as much, but the articles of controlled quality are made in front of our eyes. Photographers should not miss this. If we sit around at this essence of Moroccan culture, we understand why Pierre Loti, the French writer who settled in Istanbul, Saint-Exupéry, the pilot writer, Tennessee Williams, Jean Genet, film directors Bernardo Bertolucci and George Lucas, the crime story writer Agatha Christie, and the Orientalist professor Germanus admired the country. Agadir is primarily a holiday resort, with a pleasantly warm weather, often with hazy air in the mornings and bright sunshine in the afternoons. Due to its favorable location, the ocean moderates the warmth of the Sahara, and the Atlas protects it from the winds. The hotels of the city meet all expectations. We can find cheap little hotels further from the coast, and going towards the coast, we find 4 or 5-star luxury hotels. Several hotels have their own beach on the coast, and we can find swimming pools in all of them. In many of them, all-inclusive service is offered. Fitness and wellness centers function in them, and the organizers tempt the tourist with different sports opportunities. In one of the hotels of Agadir operates the biggest thalassa therapeutic center of the world. On the sand of the coast, we can try the camel ride, and on the farther sand dunes we can ride a quad, which is a 4-wheel sand runner. We may surf or kite, and they may also organize day-long yacht excursions. As an evening program, we could see the high-quality show at the Café de Paris. Those who would like something more authentic should not miss the Berber music night. Dinner is served in a real kasbah, which consists of tagine and couscous, naturally. During the Jeep Safari to the Souss Valley, we can cast a glance into the lives of the nomads of the desert. More than 40% of the population work in agriculture. Many keep sheep, goats, and cattle, since the supply of meat in the Islamic State is based on these animals. The most widespread means of transportation is the donkey or the mule, but in the desert area, dromedaries, or one-humped camels, are also bred. In the valleys of the rivers and the watered lands, besides the fruit and vegetables common in Europe, the growing of bananas, dates, and figs is also significant. Oranges are grown, and their pressed juice is sold in the bazaars. But it also grows wild. The peel of the fruit, otherwise useless, is brought up by the English. It's the basis of their famous breakfast jam. Due to the geographic location and the weather of the country, water supply means a real problem in large areas. The king pays special attention to the continuation of his father's program, namely the development of reservoirs. We can see a nice example of this in the Souss Valley, which is a favorite place of storks and other migratory birds coming from Europe to spend the winter here. Thousands of flamingos live in the swampy areas of the estuary. The tourist agencies bring here busloads of tourists for bird watching. The little fishing village of Tifnit, inhabited only by men, was built on the sand coast of Massa. The fishermen, who still work with the ancient scoop net method, built their huts nestled together like swallows' nests on the cliffs, in a height protected from the tide. Besides the fish, they also sell clams and crabs caught in the net. Tiznit is a little town with a southern, almost Saharan atmosphere, which is the center of the local silversmiths. Otherwise, in villages of this region, the works of smiths and other craftsmen have great traditions. The items, prepared with meticulous care, are primarily made of silver. The patterns originate from ancient tribal motifs. The jewels are often decorated with the hand of Fatima, who was the favorite daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, and her hand, according to the Berbers, brings luck. The uniquely intimate little village of Tafraout, remote from the noise of the world, lies in a wonderful natural environment. In a magnificent, wild landscape, it hides at the foot of high, pink cliffs. When I climbed to the top of a sand dune, I saw the fortress in the distance, on the plains, near to the little oasis. The French tricolour was waving joyously on the flagpole, the fortress a brown square block with thick earthen walls, a flat roof scalloped with loopholes, towers on the sides, an airy, tall lookout place, wrote P.C. Wren in his genre-making novel Blue Star. How many people wrote heroic, adventurous, romantic, or humorous novels about the French Foreign Legion? Just think of the popular novels by P. Howard. Of course, not all Kasbahs were Legion fortresses. The Berbers built these fortresses of stone or compressed earth as a defense from the conquerors in the course of their everyday battles. Often, these are 5-story buildings with scalloped moldings, and with upward narrowing towers on the 4 corners, which were sometimes built and used together by 50 families jointly.